Yes, everyone, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. We've gotten our first summer signing in Archie Gray from Leeds United for a fee of around £40 million. We've looked at the Here We Go from Fabrizio Romano. Dave has welcomed him to the club. And in this video, I'm just going to be giving my thoughts and my analysis on what I think he could bring to Ange Postecoglou's squad in this upcoming season. So if you can for me, everybody, let me know what you think he'll bring to this season, what he'll bring to Ange's team and his tactics and where he might play in the squad and in the system in those comments down below. Smash that like button for me as well. But let's get into the scout report and into this video. Now, while being only 17 years of age, he's now 18, but for the majority of that last season, Archie Gray played for a championship-level side in Leeds United who were actually battling to go to the top. We're actually expecting to be going into the Premier League this season, and so you feel like that's a lot of pressure on a 17-year-old's shoulders, and he played the majority of the season as well out of position, 30 matches, in fact, as a right back. At least that's according to Transfermarkt. 10 matches as a central midfielder, 6 matches as a deep-lying central defensive midfielder, and then 3 matches as an attacking midfielder. So you can see there's a lot of versatility there, but just have to put into context the fact that he was, during that campaign, the majority of that time, 17 years of age, and was playing out of position for a championship side that was expecting to be promoted with all that pressure as well. I just think that really speaks to the kid's talent, but as well as his ability to deal with, I think, already a really high level at such a young age. But let's take a look at some of his stats, and they're not exactly too pretty or too, I think, complimentary to this really talented player. He doesn't really have that great of crossing numbers or passing numbers in the final third. In fact, he's kind of in the very, very bottom percentile for crosses, for passes into the penalty area. But he is a tidy player, I think, in possession. In fact, you could probably see that by how he has some of a really high pass completion percentage. He's, in fact, in the top 10 percentile of any fullback because he played the majority of the games as fullback this last season. So those are some of the players that, you know, the type of category of player that we'll be comparing him to. But he's in the top 10 percentile when it comes to pass completion percentage. He's good under pressure, makes the right decisions, and also when you look at other passing metrics, there is some sign that he knows how to, you know, play the right pass or make the right decision. But I will say that the creative numbers just aren't really that complimentary towards him. He's in the bottom percentile for key passes of any fullback really in the championship. He's in some of the lower percentiles for shot creating actions. He's in the 16th there. And then what is interesting though is, again, this kind of speaks to what I was talking about, him being good under pressure. He has good successful take-on percentages and good successful take-ons in general. He's in the top 20 percentile in that metric when you're comparing him to all fullbacks across the championships. Like I said, very good decision-making in possession when passing out from the back or when put under pressure, and I think just has good composure about him for the majority of his season. And he's a good ball carrier, can take it past his man with a bit of skill, but also has just that kind of grace and that sort of elegance about him, I think, when carrying the ball. And he played next to Joe Rodon for the majority of that season, and I don't really rate Joe Rodon too much in possession, so you'd imagine that he was probably used and expected to help him out in building out from the back and taking on some of that burden off of Joe Rodon in possession. So while he doesn't have the best of creative numbers, I'm not really too sure whether even Archie Gray was expected to be one of the chief creators in this team. You got guys like Jorginho Rutter in that Leeds United team, Crescencio Somerville, one of my favorite names to even say in football, but he's a very talented winger, one of their more creative options. You have Willy Nanto, the Italian guy as well, Glenn Kamara, I think his name is, who's also seen as one of the more maybe deep-lying kind of creative players in that midfield. So I just feel like Archie Gray's numbers in FBref really have to be taken with a grain of salt or with a pinch of salt because just, yeah, he played out of position. Only played, 30 matches there, had 10 matches in central midfield, wasn't really expected to be that chief creator in the team. So I feel like there's only so much that we can take from it. And there are some interesting stats to point out that he is very good under pressure, I will say. Now, if you look at his defensive numbers, once again with the stats here, I would take a lot of it with a pinch of salt, but or a grain of salt. Tackles and interceptions are not that high for fullbacks in the championship if you're comparing him to those, and I think that can be explained by the fact he played for one of the more possession dominant teams in the championship, so he's going to have more possession than he is going to be out of possession, right? So there are fewer opportunities usually to have higher defensive output numbers if you were going to explain it that way. Clearances is very, very low. That again would explain, the fact that he's not often defending with his, with with everybody back in goal, deep in their own box. They're actually probably more often or not inside the opponent's box trying to create a goal than they are trying to defend from a goal being conceded. Dribblers tackled, though, and as well as percentage of dribblers tackled, just in general, 1v1 numbers, he looks good. He actually has some strong, solid numbers in that department. Doesn't get dribble past too often, but also puts in enough tackles to show that he is willing to put in a tackle and isn't just constantly just sort of backing off or staying away from his opponent. He will put in a challenge. He will stand up to his opponent and will put in a brave tackle. And he also commits very few fouls as well. He's in the top 6 percentile of any fullback in the championship for fouls committed. So the fact that he's in the top 20 percentile for percentage of dribblers tackled, meaning how often is he actually winning the challenge when he is going up 1v1 defensively with the dribbler. He does very well, and then he also has a high number of tackles against dribblers too. So I am encouraged by that he's a solid defender, and he's not going to be spun or going to be embarrassed, I think, in the Premier League by a tricky winger or anything. I don't necessarily feel like his future is totally as a fullback. We'll get into that later, but there are some solid defensive numbers to be looking at. Aerial win percentage wasn't really that high, and I think that's probably because, again, the Leeds United team aren't going to be defending that much, I think, against aerial bombardments from the crossing or teams that are pinning them back to their own goal. It's usually the other way around where they're doing that to other teams. So I don't expect him to have that many aerial duels of any kind. He's also 17, or 18, sorry. So we have to consider that, right? He's not someone who I expect to be at 18 years old just a menace in the air and just an aerial prowess of a defender. So that's just not something that I think I'd expect from someone at 18 years old. So he's not the most aggressive and maybe one of the most involved defenders by the looks of things. But that being said, I feel like he shows that he has good 1v1 numbers defensively, and he wasn't really expected, I think, to have super high defensive numbers. He's probably expected more to be helpful in possession than exactly out of possession. But 17 years old, or for the majority of that last campaign, I think he did pretty well defensively, and I think there's some numbers to take encouragement from. And I'm also really encouraged by his good 1v1 numbers, but also combined with the fact that he's committing very few fouls. I think that's a good combo to see for an intelligent defender. Now, if we were to compare our current right back and Pedro Porro to Archie Gray, I feel like it's an unfair comparison, but it must be done. It's kind of how these scout reports are conducted here on the channel. And once again, I feel like we can't read too much into things. I think Archie isn't technically a natural right back, right? He was playing out of position for the majority of last season. And I don't think he was probably asked to be as involved in the attacking player. He wasn't as responsible for the creativity in the attacking final third than probably Pedro Porro was, or Destiny Udogie, where I think he was probably more asked to help out, building out from the back, retaining possession, just being a cool, calm, collected player when kind of retaining possession for this Leeds United team, being such a possession dominant side. And I think there are fewer opportunities actually for him to score or create and put in really good crosses for an assist than probably what Pedro Porro had in comparison. He has a worse aerial win percentage than Porro, and I'd probably explain that by him being only 18 years of age, but it could be something that, while he's very tall, something that he might need to work on, something that he still needs some development in. He's not as creative or as threatening near goal as Pedro Porro. Very few players are. He's practically one of the best in the Premier League, but that then kind of gives me some sort of pause or hesitation really when it comes to, is Archie Gray really the ideal kind of right back cover for Pedro Porro? Because I think he's very good in possession, very tidy player, Archie Gray, but I'm not sure if he actually offers that creative threat near the goal or in the final third as someone like Pedro Porro does, or even really that close. He does, though, have, again, strong 1v1 defensive numbers, and if you compare him to Porro, they have a similar number of tackles per match, but he's also committing fewer fouls while having a similar number of tackles, and has better percentage of dribblers tackled in comparison to the likes of Pedro Porro. So, again, strong numbers to be looking at when you're looking at his defensive game in comparison to others. Now, if we were to compare him to someone who I wonder if they're actually going for as an alternative to, we were linked with Conor Gallagher for such a long time, My theory is, and I'll get into it a bit later at the end of this video, I wonder if he's been brought in, Archie Gray, as an alternative to Conor Gallagher. He's a good ball carrier, Archie Gray. He has a very good first touch, has very good technique, and arguably has a much, much higher ceiling than someone like Conor Gallagher. Technically isn't a Chelsea player as well, so might actually want to come and play for Spurs, and has good kind of all-around numbers and good all-around game that maybe Gallagher doesn't exactly have. Gallagher, I think, excels in certain areas. He's a very good presser, good box-to-box goal scorer, whereas Archie Gray has, I think, more of a well-rounded game. He has good 1v1 defensive numbers like we brought up, but also has, I think, really good tight control, very tidy player, and has, I think, more technique to his game that kind of would exemplify or maybe suit more of an Ange system than maybe even someone like Gallagher. I've explained in a members video why I think Ange likes Gallagher, but I feel like Gray actually can offer something slightly different while also playing in a similar position. He can play in the 8. I also feel like he could play technically in the number 6 role, Archie Gray. He has a good technique in his game. He knows how to be able to handle it under pressure. I wonder if he's been brought in here as an alternative to Gallagher. Just quickly on the stats, I feel like, like I said, can't really take too much of it that seriously because these guys were playing in such different positions for the majority of the season. But Gallagher had really good numbers last year, and Gray, though, does come close in certain areas. Progressive passes are quite close despite playing such different positions. You can also see that the defensive numbers are quite close to each other, and Gray, once again, has a higher percentage of dribblers tackled. He's not committing as many fouls either, so he is good in the defensive area, Gray, when asked, and he has a similar number of successful take-ons. I'd argue he's actually an even better dribbler than someone like Gallagher, and the fact that they have both that defensive kind of part to their game, but Gray may be a more technically gifted player, I think it could be the reason or could be the source to maybe why Spurs actually have maybe gone for Gray instead of a Gallagher, but that's just my theory. But just to summarize Archie Gray and give my quick conclusion at the end, I think he has very good close control. That would definitely be part of his strengths. Very good under pressure, like I mentioned before, just an all-around tidy player. Makes good decisions as well under pressure, can get out of it with either a nice body feint when receiving it or can dribble past his marker quite easily when put under pressure, and has that good passing range or kind of, skill when just poking it around and creating a 1-2 or using his passing skills to get around a player. Not exactly, totally full of flair, or is maybe the most kind of skillful player with flair, but I do think he has this kind of skill and technique and grace to his game where he can quickly touch it around a guy, has just, I think, good kind of all-around technique to him in his game when either dribbling past players or when just receiving the ball. He has such a good first touch. And despite being 17 in the championship, I feel like he didn't look that intimidated by the physical side of the game from what I could tell from maybe one or two of the games that I watched, but also just from the highlights, and that he is willing to put in a tackle despite being so young, and you would think maybe intimidated by the physical side of the championship. He's a very good footballer. He's a generational talent. He played a full season for a top-level championship side with high expectations and pressure despite only being 17 years old at the time, and he played the majority of the season out of position, which I think demonstrates that he's a very technically gifted player, but also has a decent IQ of the game, of where to position himself, how not to get exposed, and also making good decisions either defensively or in possession. Very tall, physical, technically gifted, just a very, very high ceiling player and a generational talent that Spurs have somehow been able to secure here. And it could also be a bit of an opportunistic signing where, yes, maybe they had their sights on someone like Gallagher that was also seen as an opportunity to take advantage of, but maybe all in all, this combination of him being a very young, high ceiling of a talent, but also the fact that he checks a lot of boxes for Spurs, maybe they thought this as an even better opportunity in this PSR window. Now, personally, I don't think he's being brought in as just a designated right back cover for Pedro Porro. In fact, I think he's being brought in more as an alternative homegrown signing to Conor Gallagher. He can play in more than one position in comparison to Conor Gallagher, who's just more of a box-to-box number 8, in my opinion. He's younger, has more of a homegrown, higher potential category, and has more skill to his game, I think, in the long run that would suit Ange Postecoglou's system. He also could be really good competition slash could be a good alternative for even the number 6 role, not just the number 8, the box-to-box role where Sarr or Bentancur plays. He also could be good competition to where Bentancur plays the number 6 roles, whereas also Bissouma plays in the number 6 role. He has really good decision making. He's good under pressure. We spoke about a lot his defensive side to his game. He's a good dribbler, has really good first touch, and has a developing passing range. All kind of the ingredients, I think, of a developing high potential number 6. And if he's being brought in as this young homegrown talent to cover a ton of areas in the midfield, and then also technically, if need be, cover in as a right back cover for Pedro Porro if it comes to that, I don't really see this as a bad or really, ridiculous replacement idea for Oliver Skip, who's expected to leave as a homegrown option, but also Højbjerg, who's going to be leaving this summer. So those two midfield roles needed to be taken up, and I think this Archie Gray signing actually makes a lot of sense for Spurs for a lot of reasons, with those two guys leaving and then also looking for a homegrown guy that can come into the team straight away. I'm not so sure about him as a designated right back cover for Pedro Porro. I wonder if he lacks that creative play that Pedro does in those wide areas specifically. I think he's better suited for creating in the midfield, Archie Gray, but I also wonder if he would struggle against the real top quality wingers defensively in those wide areas where he has to come out and be able to have the pace as well as the strength to be able to match them defensively. So I wonder if he might struggle in that area. But if he's covering or coming in to cover a variety of the midfield positions and act as good cover for the number 6 as well as the number 8, I actually see this as a decent signing. In fact, maybe even a better signing than what Conor Gallagher would have been for that midfield. Well, let me know your thoughts on Archie Gray, everybody, and please get in those comments and let me know if there's anything I might have gotten wrong or something that you feel like was missing or anything you might disagreed with or agreed with during this video. Smash that like button, and let's hope that Archie Gray settles in very well to Tottenham Hotspur, our very first signing of this summer under Ange Postecoglou.